Thanks so much for being here. It's always good to have you. Today, we must address Speaker Johnson's comments to CNN's Manu Raju, where the speaker claimed he never actively tried to kill the discharge petition for the Epstein bill, but cited concerns, specifically President Trump's, about protecting victims from disclosure. Let's hear that clip. His exact words were, "We wanted to ensure that victims of these heinous crimes are completely protected from disclosure, those who don't want their names to be out there, and I'm not sure the discharge does that, and that's part of the problem." What's your professional assessment of that statement? I wish I could express my true feelings using stronger language, but let's just say I believe his explanation is completely disingenuous. Well, since we're on cable, you technically could use stronger language, but I understand the restraint. I'll simply say I believe he is entirely full of it. Because here's the reality. This entire situation began because he actively tried to suppress action. We know he resisted bringing the House back into session specifically to avoid dealing with the Epstein files. He even delayed swearing in a duly elected new member of Congress, which effectively denied a state representation, and he was sued over it. He violated basic constitutional functions, all to avoid this vote. So please spare me the pretense that his sudden concern is centered around victim protection. Furthermore, when some documents from the Epstein estate were initially released, documents we had meticulously worked to redact to protect victims' names, who was it that immediately went out and started speculating, essentially identifying individuals by connecting them to specific redacted sections? Members of his own party, the Republicans, did that. It was such a reckless act that one victim's family was forced to speak out against them for jeopardizing her privacy. Their actions demonstrate their rhetoric is hollow. Now, he has abruptly shifted his stance and promised a vote. The change is clearly tactical. I believe the shift is because internal party conversations have revealed that the bill is either set to die in the Senate due to lack of votes, or the Senate simply won't bring it up at all. He never genuinely intended for this legislation to advance. So you predict the measure will ultimately be blocked in the Senate. I believe it will be stopped one way or another. The alternative blocking strategy is equally cynical, reopening investigations to legally justify withholding files. The original reason the files couldn't be released was the existence of active cases. This administration chose not to investigate the Epstein network, which concluded the cases, theoretically allowing the files to be opened. But now, in a complete reversal, the administration is suggesting a massive new investigation, essentially saying, investigate my political opponents, look into this so-called hoax. If new investigations are open, that provides a perfect legal excuse to immediately shield the documents from release. This directly mirrors the concerns raised by Republican Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky, the sponsor of this disclosure bill. President Trump has publicly urged the Justice Department to investigate prominent Democrats, like former President Bill Clinton, regarding their alleged ties to Epstein. Massie shares your worry. Let's hear his comments. Massie warned that if they have ongoing investigations in certain areas, those documents can't be released. So this might be a big smokescreen, these investigations, to open a bunch of them as a last-ditch effort to prevent the release of the Epstein files, or it could just block the release of the ones having to do with Democrats. You are absolutely aligned on this concern. Yes, absolutely. This isn't about some sudden moral awakening or finding the right side of history. The record shows he has consistently opposed his own base on this. He has told his followers on his social platform, stop talking about this. His faction shut down the House when Americans faced critical issues, all because they refused to deal with the Epstein files, which he labeled a hoax. Now he claims there's something to investigate. He is inconsistent and opportunistic. The concrete fact we know is that he was personally sued at least twice by alleged child sex victims as a co-defendant alongside Jeffrey Epstein. Name one other prominent Democrat who faced a similar civil suit alongside Epstein going back nearly a decade ago. It should be noted that those civil cases did not proceed to a verdict. They may not have gone to a judgment, but the serious allegations were absolutely made. Furthermore, they were made in coordination with information we know Epstein possessed. We know, based on his emails from 2009 when he was first charged, that he admitted he was forced to take a deal for a mandatory minimum of 10 years because he was afraid he would get even more time. After receiving that highly criticized sweetheart deal from Alex Acosta, he was later re-indicted in 2019. The bottom line is that while civil cases may have been dismissed or settled, Epstein himself was a self-admitted criminal. The fact that the cases went away does not equate to the president being absolved of all suspicion. The public deserves the full truth. I want to pivot to your House colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Viewers certainly recall the colorful language you used to describe her during a committee meeting, though it must be stressed she initiated that exchange. Setting aside that personal rivalry, you two agree on the Epstein file release. Her support has now put her crosswise with President Trump. I want to play a clip of her speaking to Donna Bash yesterday. She said, "I would like to say humbly, I'm sorry for taking part in the toxic politics. It's very bad for our country, and it's been something I've thought about a lot. I'm only responsible for myself and my own words and actions, and am committed to put down the knives in politics." Following this, you posted a sarcastic but pointed offer. "This almost feels like a moment where Marge should phone a friend. I'm here for you, girl." What is your genuine reaction to her apology? Have you two spoken? I do need to clarify that the post was absolutely sarcastic, but as often happens, there is a kernel of truth in the joke. Another part of that post was me stating, "I told you you couldn't trust him." That is the fundamental truth here. Everyone needs to understand how Donald Trump operates. As far as I'm concerned, he is the central cause of the toxic confusion and destruction we've seen in politics. Before him, we could disagree vehemently without it constantly escalating into violence. Since his introduction to the political sphere, we have witnessed a constant and dangerous spike in political violence. Regarding Marge's statement, I appreciate the words she uses, but I have to wait and see the corresponding actions. My question is, where was this reflective mood, this regret, when we saw what happened to Mr. Pelosi in his own home? He wasn't even an elected official, yet he was attacked because someone decided to target his wife's speaker, Nancy Pelosi. Where was this remorse when we saw local elected leaders like the former Speaker of the House in Minnesota murdered recently? Why did it take the toxicity hitting her for this realization to occur? What is so frustrating about not just Marjorie, but the MAGA movement collectively, is that they are now entering the find out phase. They spent years helping to create this awful, vicious environment. Now that their loyalty is being questioned and the consequences of the environment they fostered are hitting home, they're suddenly realizing, oh my gosh, this is terrible. They should have recognized the destructive nature of this atmosphere when it was directed at anyone else. It's particularly galling when you consider the real-world impact. A competing news organization recently ran an entire story detailing the fact that I have to pay for my own personal security. I have to fund that protection because of the irresponsible stories they and others run about me. Security necessitated by the sheer hatred peddled by people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and other MAGA figures. This is a severe and problematic burden. And now, to see the former president and people like Laura Loomer openly troll her for needing security is the peak of hypocrisy. They fuel the threats, then ridicule the security measures required to counter those threats. My only response to the president mocking her security needs is this. If he truly believes security is a joke, then let him give back all the millions of taxpayer dollars we pay for his security detail when he goes golfing or travels. Return that money, and perhaps we could use it to fund healthcare for Americans or feed hungry children. The cost of their political theater is ultimately paid by the American public. That is a powerful point on the hypocrisy and the misuse of public resources. Congresswoman, we truly appreciate your time and your very candid take on the Epstein file fight, the shifting political loyalties, and the dangerous state of our national dialogue. Thank you for providing a platform for this critical discussion. It is essential that we move beyond the political games and focus on the serious issues facing the country. If you found this information helpful, hit the like button so YouTube knows this truth needs to be seen, and subscribe to join the fight for accountability and catch our next deep dive.